The Galactic Council had been observing humanity for centuries, silently tracking their rise from a fractured world into one of the few truly unified species in the galaxy. Despite the relatively primitive technology, they had always underestimated the resilience of Earth's inhabitants. To the galactic powers, humanity's history was marked by constant conflict, petty wars, and a deep-seated fear of being torn apart. For them, humans were often seen as little more than a footnote, a species prone to violence, incapable of evolving beyond their primitive instincts. The Council's assessment of humanity was simple. Humans are afraid of war. They fear it, avoid it, and are at the mercy of those who can use it. This was their dominant view, one which had been passed down from one leader to the next, unquestioned and unchallenged. They believed humanity could never be a true threat in the galactic arena because their most enduring trait was their fear of large-scale conflict. That perception, however, was about to change. The story begins when a sudden and unprovoked attack by the Cretan Empire, a brutal and advanced race from the Outer Rim, shakes the foundation of the galactic order. The Cretans, known for their terrifying military capabilities and history of conquering civilizations, had set their sights on Earth. With technology that outclassed humanity's, they swept through human defenses, intending to colonize Earth and strip its resources. The Council had been content to let the Cretans do as they pleased. After all, why interfere when the humans would undoubtedly fold under the pressure, like they always did? But then, something unexpected happened. Earth, this species the Council had dismissed, didn't panic. They didn't fold. They didn't run. Instead, the humans fought back in a way no one expected. The story follows Captain Leah Winters, a veteran of the Earth Defense Force and the leader of a ragtag team of soldiers who had been part of the first human resistance effort. The Cretans had struck without warning, launching a series of devastating attacks across Earth's colonies. Cities were burned, and billions of lives were lost in the blink of an eye. But humanity's response wasn't one of terror. It was one of defiance. Captain Winters, a woman hardened by years of combat, stood on the front lines of humanity's last hope. The resistance was a chaotic coalition of militias, military factions, and civilians who had learned to fight in ways that defied the conventional methods of warfare. They had no advanced weaponry, no overwhelming technological advantage, yet they had something far more dangerous: the ability to think outside the box and to adapt rapidly in the heat of battle. In the midst of this chaos, Captain Winters and her team were tasked with defending a key communications hub that was essential to coordinating the global counteroffensive. This mission was critical, as if the Cretans seized the hub, they would have the upper hand in controlling Earth's forces. But it was a suicide mission. The Cretan army was overwhelming, and no one truly believed the resistance could win. As the team gathered, Captain Winters addressed her soldiers. "This is it. We stand here today because we believe in something more than survival. We believe in freedom. We believe in humanity. And we fight today not just for ourselves, but for every person on Earth." The soldiers looked back at her with steely resolve. They were tired, broken, and the odds were stacked impossibly against them, but they stood firm. The Council, with its decades of complacency, had not seen this. They had not seen the fire in humanity's heart. And they would learn that underestimating humanity would be their greatest mistake. With the Cretans closing in, Winter's team prepared for the inevitable assault. Yet, there was no fear in their eyes. No desperation. Just a fierce determination that would turn the tide of battle. They weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a future, one they would create with their own hands, no matter the cost. As the first explosions rocked the ground, the humans prepared to face the impossible odds with courage, resilience, and the knowledge that this time, it was not just about fighting for survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The world was about to witness the awakening of a force that would change everything. The Cretans were about to realize, far too late, that humanity had never been afraid of war, not really. It was not fear that had held them back, but something far more powerful: restraint. And now, that restraint had shattered. In the dark depths of space, The Galactic Council watched with growing concern as humanity began to rise from the ashes of its once crippling fear. They had miscalculated. They had made the fatal error of believing that humanity could never fight back with anything more than desperation. Now they would find out just how wrong they were. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn the true meaning of human strength. The tide of war had turned unexpectedly, and the Galactic Council, with all its wisdom and far-reaching power, could no longer ignore the terrifying potential that humanity had demonstrated. The Crethean Empire, whose ships once gleamed with confidence, now found themselves unexpectedly matched against a force they had never anticipated. They thought Earth would fall without resistance, like all the other lesser species they had crushed in their wake. But they had grossly underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of humankind. Captain Leah Winters, her hand steady on the hilt of her weapon, scanned the battlefield from her vantage point atop a ridge. The comms were alive with static and chatter, but through it all, she could hear the one message that she and her team had been waiting for. The counteroffensive has begun. It wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the moment humanity had long feared, war on a scale beyond anything they had known. But instead of faltering, they were rallying, fighting back with the ferocity of cornered animals, each one determined to protect their homes, families, and future. The resistance was now unified, but the situation had escalated from one bad day to a full-scale planetary conflict. The Cretheans, after the initial surprise, launched wave after wave of more powerful and aggressive assaults. Their warriors, known for their brutal efficiency and superior tactics, began pressing the humans on all fronts. The once confident Crethean military began to feel the bite of humanity's fierce retaliation. For Leah and her team, the situation had gone from desperate to nearly hopeless. Their main objective had been to hold the communications hub, but with the enemy forces converging from every direction, that objective now seemed impossible. Their numbers were thin, and their resources stretched beyond their limits. Yet Leah refused to give up. Her team had only one advantage: humanity's ability to adapt and innovate in the midst of chaos. "We don't have the firepower they do, but we do have the advantage of being unpredictable," Leah said, rallying her soldiers. "They think we'll follow the rules of war, that will engage them the way they fought other species. But we won't. We'll fight them our way." The team, visibly exhausted and covered in the grime of battle, looked to her for direction. They didn't need traditional strategies. They needed to think like humans, resourceful, creative, and relentless. The first step was to use the terrain to their advantage. The Cretheans, with their advanced technology, relied on high-tech scanners and weapons, but they weren't prepared for the kind of guerrilla tactics that humanity could employ. Leah's team began using the dense forests, caves, and tunnels to create an elaborate series of traps. They employed makeshift explosive devices, hacked into Crethean comms to send them false information, and launched surprise ambushes from hidden positions. While it wasn't enough to defeat the Crethean war machine, it was enough to slow them down, enough to create doubt. Leah's soldiers fought in ways no alien species could predict, using the environment, exploiting weaknesses, and constantly shifting tactics. Every time the Cretheans thought they had the humans cornered, they found themselves wrong. Then came the turning point, the humans' first major victory. The Cretheans, who were used to controlling every aspect of the battle, found themselves caught in an unexpected trap set by Leah's team. As their forces attempted to encircle a group of rebel soldiers, Leah's unit activated a network of hidden mines and EMP devices they had planted in advance. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the Crethean ranks. For the first time in the war, the enemy was forced to retreat. Leah stood amidst the smoke and debris, breathing heavily. She could hardly believe it. It had worked. But this was just the beginning. "Keep moving," she ordered. "We've got them on the run, but we can't let up." Not now. The Cretheans, who had long believed themselves invincible, were now forced to confront the true nature of humanity. As the days passed, their confidence cracked, and Leah's team became a symbol of defiance. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of the entire human race. The Galactic Council, watching from their distant vantage point, was horrified by the rapid shift in momentum. They had believed that humanity, in its fear of war, would be easy to control. But now, they were beginning to understand the power of a species that had survived centuries of internal conflict, oppression, and strife. The humans, once seen as weak and divided, had shown that they were anything but. They had found strength in their unity, their creativity, and their unwavering will to protect their own. But the war was far from over. Leah knew this victory was only a temporary setback for the Creathians. They would regroup, they would adapt, and they would come back stronger. The question was, would humanity be ready for what was to come? As the battle raged on, one thing became clear to Leah: the humans were no longer fighting to prove themselves. They were fighting to protect their world, and that, more than anything, made them the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known. The Creathians were no longer underestimating humanity, but it was too late. The first blow had been struck, and while the Creathians still held the upper hand in terms of sheer firepower, they had learned a valuable lesson. Humans could not be defeated by conventional means. Humanity's ability to think on their feet and adapt quickly had forced the Creathians to play a new kind of game, a game that was foreign to them, a game of unpredictability and resourcefulness. For Captain Leah Winters, the battle was far from over. The Creathians were regrouping, and they had been quick to adapt to the guerrilla tactics humanity had employed. Their response was swift and brutal, launching airstrikes, bombarding cities, and sending in their elite soldiers to systematically hunt down every human resistance group they could find. The Creathians had learned from their initial defeat, and their next wave would be stronger, more calculated, and far more dangerous. Leah's team was spread thin, and the number of casualties was growing. The humans had used their ingenuity to inflict damage, but the Creathians had countered with overwhelming force. Despite their tenacity, the human resistance was starting to crack under the weight of the sustained assault. It was clear they couldn't continue this way much longer. But Leah was not one to surrender. She had faced insurmountable odds before and had come out on top. Now, more than ever, she knew humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just their creativity. It was their unbreakable spirit. The very thing that had made them vulnerable in the eyes of the Council was the same thing that had kept them alive for centuries. The resilience that drove them to fight even when defeat seemed inevitable. "We don't have much time," Leah said, looking at the map on the holotable in front of her. "If we can't push them back now, we risk losing everything. We need to hit them harder, faster, and with everything we have left." The plan was risky. They didn't have the numbers or resources to launch a full-scale counterattack, but Leah had a wild idea. If they could infiltrate the Creathian supply lines and destroy their ability to sustain this level of aggression, they could cripple their advance. The strategy was based on the same principles that had worked before: surprise, creativity, and the willingness to take massive risks. Leah quickly assembled a small strike team, including her most trusted allies, Sergeant MR.america, a weapons expert with a knack for explosives, Corporal Cale Walker, a master of sabotage, and Lieutenant Eli Xander, a communications specialist who could hack into Creathian tech like no one else. Together, they would infiltrate the Creathian base and disrupt their operations from the inside. The mission was dangerous. The enemy forces had fortified their positions, and the area was heavily guarded. But Leah's team had one advantage the Creathians didn't: they knew how to move undetected. Using the cover of darkness, and the same guerrilla tactics that had already disrupted the enemy, they navigated through the dense jungle and approached the Creathian base undetected. Once inside, the tension was palpable. They moved quickly, placing explosive charges on key fuel supplies and ammunition caches while Cale hacked into the Creathian communications system to send false orders to their troops. The mission was going according to plan, until they were discovered. The Creathians had set up advanced security measures, and it wasn't long before an alarm went off, signaling their presence. The base erupted into chaos as Creathian soldiers scrambled to respond. Leah's team fought tooth and nail, using every bit of their training to hold the line. But they were outnumbered, and the odds were quickly shifting in the enemy's favor. "Get to the extraction point!" Leah shouted. "We've completed the mission. We just need to get out alive." The team fought their way through the base, moving like a well-oiled machine. Explosions rocked the facility as their charges detonated, sending the Crethians into disarray. But the escape was anything but easy. They were surrounded, and with every step, it felt like the walls were closing in on them. But they kept fighting, not just for their survival, but for the future of humanity. As they neared the extraction point, it became clear that they weren't going to make it out unscathed. The Crethians were closing in, their weapons raised, ready to take down the humans once and for all. But just as the enemy moved in for the kill, a massive explosion shook the ground. The team looked up to see a wave of Crethian ships disintegrating as humanity's reinforcements arrived, led by the Resolute, humanity's flagship. The tide of the battle shifted in an instant. Leah's team, battered but not broken, managed to retreat to safety as the Crethians were overwhelmed by the newly arrived forces. The Crethian offensive had stalled, and humanity had proven yet again that they would not be easily defeated. As the battle subsided and the dust settled, Leah stood in the midst of the wreckage, her mind still racing. The Crethians had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had found themselves facing a humanity that would not be broken, no matter the odds. The battle was far from over, but Leah knew one thing for sure: the galaxy would no longer underestimate humanity. The aftermath of the battle left Earth's defenders battered and bruised, but not defeated. Humanity had once again proven their resolve, but the war was far from over. Captain Leah Winters stood on the command deck of the Resolute, the flagship of Earth's fleet, looking out into the cold void of space. The Crethian forces had been driven back for now, but Leah knew better than to believe the fight was over. The Crethians would regroup, adapt, and return with more strength than before. "We've bought ourselves some time," Leah said, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "But the Crethians aren't the type to back down easily. We need to keep pushing." Beside her, Lieutenant Eli Xander, the communication officer who had hacked into Crethian systems before, nodded. "We've got reinforcements coming in from the outer colonies, but it's still going to be a long road ahead. The Crethians won't give up." Leah exhaled deeply. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Humanity had faced the unimaginable, and yet they had stood strong. The victory, while hard fought, was bittersweet. There had been losses, sacrifices, and pain. Yet, there was something undeniably powerful in what they had accomplished. Earth's people had fought back against a seemingly unstoppable enemy, and for the first time, they weren't the underdogs. "The Crethians underestimated us," Leah muttered, half to herself. "They thought we were weak, afraid. They thought we couldn't fight." Her eyes narrowed as she looked out the viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. They were wrong. As the fleet regrouped, Leah gathered her team in the war room to discuss their next steps. They had already destroyed a significant portion of the Crethian supply lines, but it wasn't enough. The Crethians had far more resources than they had anticipated, and it would take every ounce of humanity's ingenuity and creativity to stand a chance. "We're not fighting them with weapons alone," Leah said, addressing her team. "We're going to win this war by outsmarting them, by using the one thing they don't understand, us. Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to think, to adapt, and to outlast." Sergeant Amara Reyes, a weapons expert and Leah's most trusted advisor, raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we play their game, but with our own rules?" Leah smiled. "Exactly. We'll use their tactics, but we'll make them ours. Guerrilla warfare, surprise attacks, ambushes. They think they've got us cornered, but they haven't seen what we're truly capable of. We'll take the fight to them, and when they least expect it, we'll strike with everything we've got." The plan was risky, but it was the only option. Leah knew they couldn't win by fighting the Crethians on their terms. Humanity had always survived through creative thinking, adaptability, and sheer willpower. Now they would take that approach to an entirely new level. As the days passed, the human forces prepared for their next move. The resistance continued to grow, swelling with new recruits from every corner of the globe. The Crethians, on the other hand, were left scrambling, their initial confidence shaken. They had never encountered a species quite like humanity, resilient, unpredictable, and relentless. Leah's team was ready to launch their next strike, a high-stakes mission to infiltrate a key Creathian command center deep within enemy territory. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and would require the utmost precision and secrecy. It was their chance to cripple the Creathian command structure and disrupt their military coordination. If they succeeded, it would be a game-changer. If they failed, it could mean the end of the war for humanity. On the eve of the mission, Leah stood alone on the deck of the Resolute, staring into the stars. The hum of the ship was soothing, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on her shoulders. She had led her team through countless battles, but this mission was unlike any other. The stakes were higher than ever. "We can do this," she whispered to herself. "We've already done the impossible once. We'll do it again." The next morning, as the team prepared to embark on their mission, there was no room for doubt. They were united, determined, and ready to face whatever the Creathians could throw at them. The human resistance was no longer just a small band of rebels. They were a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of defiance that would not be extinguished. The mission was a success. Through cunning, creativity, and sheer willpower, Leah and her team infiltrated the Creathian stronghold, destroying critical infrastructure and disrupting their command network. The Creathians were thrown into disarray, their plans for Earth shattered. It was a turning point in the war. The victory didn't come without cost, but as Leah and her team stood amidst the wreckage of their final strike, there was a sense of triumph in the air. They had done what the galaxy once thought impossible. They had faced an overwhelmingly powerful enemy and emerged victorious. Humanity had proven once again that they were not to be underestimated. The Creathians, who had believed they could crush Earth without consequence, had learned a hard lesson. Humans, when pushed to the brink, could become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. And as the battle for Earth raged on, the galaxy would never forget the day humanity's patience finally broke.